We are crossing over. We're crossing. Let's go. Hey. We're crossing over to the social crossover from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. We contain Lhoza Wamamfene.
Oh yes, 3 minutes past 8 social crossover, and because it is a Tuesday, sibanaye ke ulihle King Ngqoyi ebegula ke jongana qoma jonga uzawugowisha le uzawugowisha because kuyaguleka manje umuntu uneflu umzimba obuhlungu so sibulele bake ephakamile waba lapha nathi namhlanje. Good morning lihle.
Good morning mom, so kunjani?
I'm good. Ndiyavuya ukubona ukhaba fresh. Blind.
Oh, hey, moms, I've been missing being here. Yo.
Woman ivela ngathi inyanga yonke. All right, kabulisa baphulaphuli be social crossover nabe Keith Ngesi Radio sizongena emxholweni.
Awesome. Good morning to abaphulaphuli be Keith Ngesi Radio and social crossover. I'm super excited today because I'm in good health today, right? That's the first and most important thing I'm very excited about. It's that, yeah, really, one week away from being here felt like a year indeed. I was like, yo, inobandifika nini ke ngoku inobanza uphinda ndibuyele.
All right.
So yes. No, so today I'm super excited about today. Today we'll be finishing off from where we left the last time. We spoke about selling, being a way of life. So today we'll be continuing with regards to that on sales. What is sales and how you can be able to make sales your strength as a business person, right? Yeah. So that's what we'll be talking about today.
Okay. Let me hand over to you. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ma. Now, if you will go back to, to reflect a little bit on where we left off, we spoke about selling. That a lot of people do not like selling. A lot of people hate selling. They grew up to believe that, sales is wrong. Selling something to people is wrong. A lot of people hate being sold. A lot of people have a very negative attitude towards people who sell. And little do they understand that they themselves are salespeople. So we then spoke about, different types of salespeople. That other one is in denial, which means the first one is just one who is just neglecting the fact that they are salespeople. And then we get the amateur salesperson who actually is a salesperson, but he's just doing it for the sake of doing it, right?
Okay.
And then he said we get the grades, which means these guys want to master a sale. They want to be good at this thing. They nurture, they embrace being salespeople. Now, the first and foremost, what you always need to understand, what do we mean when we say everybody is in the business of sales, right? Sales runs every single profession, right?
Okay.
So starting from being a school teacher has to communicate his ideas with his students, as to why it's important for them to focus on studies, right? And when they teach or convey their message or lessons, they have to make the lessons, conceivable for that, for their students to understand, right? They need to make pass on their ideas in the simplest of form for their students to understand. Now, every school teacher that I liked because they made difficult subjects simple, right? Every maths teacher that I felt that this guy was the best had ways of being able to simplify maths for me, make it easy, right? So in other words, ultimately, a school teacher is a salesperson because when a school teacher fails to be able to sell or communicate his or her ideas to his student, right? That student, the first thing that happens is his students' marks go down. And then it becomes a trend. When they come into izandla zalo tishala, they have a tendency of failing. And then the school starts reviewing the performance of the teacher. Why? Because the teacher is not good at selling his ideas to the student. Ultimately, when this behavior continues, this school teacher gets fired. Why? Because they are not effective in their job. So in other words, your ability to sell or communicate your ideas to people affects your effectability, even in the workplace. Right? So now we're moving on to another profession that goes for being a nurse, that goes with being a doctor. If a nurse or a doctor cannot be able to convey a message clear enough to his client, why it's important for them to take action in doing this, then you will never be able to be effective as a doctor. You will not be able to be effective as a nurse. In other words, what I'm trying to say to you is that sales runs economies. More often than not, a person or an individual who has a job may dislike sales, but what do you do when you're going into a job interview? You're selling yourself, right?
Yes.
And
Interview.
another thing is, after you've received the job, you sell yourself even more. Every single day you start selling yourself. Why? Because keeping the sale is harder than getting the sale. Right? It's the same as a guy coming to a girl and saying, listen, I like you or I love you and I'd like you to be my partner. Right? Perhaps getting the woman may be easy, but keeping her is quite a job, right? Because you have to keep the standard of what you promised. Because you know that on the day you stop living up to expectation, or the day you stop not being able to sell yourself effectively as a product, you are going to be, fired, right? Which means, so in other words, we as individuals, first and foremost, you have to realize that we are all entities. That, sales affects first and foremost what kind of job you will have. Sales also affects what kind of friends you have, right? In other words, every single friend you've got, there's something in common that you have together, and there's a certain kind of standard that you guys have together. Whether you are aware of it or not, there's a standard that is there. And the day you stop maintaining or keeping or living up to that standard, your friendship with this particular individual will be terminated. So what does that tell you? It tells you that it may be easier to get the sale, but it's harder to keep the relationship, right? To keep the sale going. Now, where am I going with this? What I'm trying to say is selling is a way of life. If you are a parent, right? If you are a parent and you've got kids, your ability to be able to influence or convince your children that your ideas are good for them, right? It's good for them not to smoke. It's beneficial for them to focus on their studies. Your ability to be able to communicate your ideas determines if your child will buy into the idea or not. If your child does not buy into the idea, it means you're an awful salesperson. It means you cannot sell. So what is selling? So selling in the simplest way or form, it basically means to be able to influence or affect somebody to be able to make decisions or act in your favor. That's all there is to selling. It is being able to influence somebody to act on your behalf or to act on your favor. It's a very important trait to have, because if you cannot sell your ideas or communicate your ideas effectively, more often than not, people will communicate their ideas to you and you will end up not having more for you. In other words, for you to have anything you desire in life, in other words, whatsoever you desire in life depends on your ability to sell or communicate your ideas.
Okay.
That's all, right?
So if
which means
you won't be able to sell.
You won't be able to sell. And if you cannot convince, you will, more often than not, you will not be able to get what you want. Sales even sales influence every department of your life. The quality of friendships you have, quality of job you have. It affects ultimately the quality of income you get. Right? We get in life what we negotiate for. We get in life what we are able to tolerate. So in other words, if even negotiations, when we talk about negotiations boils down to this, to selling
Sure.
and communicating your ideas, right? So that's very important. Another thing you need to realize, before you are able to sell to anybody else, you need to first be sold. So before I sell anything to you, I must first be sold, which means I must be convicted. I must be convinced that whatever message that I'm conveying across to you or passing on to you is valuable. That this message is worth it, and this message is valuable. Now,
So
if you get
afunekanga ube bhetye wena kuqala ngoba andiza kujonga
Yes.
ebusweni ndifumanise uba le nto uyithengisayo kwawena awukho sure wena kuqala uyazi, so i-product knowledge i-right ibalulekile. Ndiza kujonga apha ebusweni kwam, ayazi loo nto athetha ngayo, khawuyeke ke ndimyeke. So xa ukuthengisa into funeka ube kwawena ube kanti convinced. That's why abanye abantu udla ngothiwa if it's a product isebenzise wena uzokwazi uba uthi le product isebenza ngohlobo nohlobo, uzokwazi uba ube convincing xa ufika komnye umntu.
Yes. More often than not, they say be a product of the product. Right?
Yeah.
Which means whatever it is that you are selling, you first need to be sold into the idea. Now, I see this a lot of times. Somebody says, I want to be a property investor. I'm looking for funding. And you ask this person one question: do you believe in your dreams so much that you could quit your job today?
Yeah.
I'll be confused. Be like, okay, which means this person doesn't believe that this goal or dream is big enough or worth it. Yes.
Sure.
Now, when I look back to my personal life story, I sold myself since grade 7 about this thing of wealth creation. In grade 10, I was trying to start convincing my parents, for the chief, I need to quit grade 10. I need to quit school. Right? I was already in negotiations with my parents. And I was sold out that I had all that it takes. Now, this is a very important thing that you need to realize when you are convicted of being sold. When you are sold into an idea, you need to regard or disregard every other proof that there is. And believe that your idea exists and your idea is worth it and your idea is possible. And you have all that it takes to bring this idea into fruition. Now, what often happens is a lot of people try to sell you something that they do not believe is worth dropping out of school for. Can you believe dropping out of school, risking your entire future, your entire security, according to what, to the standards of the world today, risking, security in terms of job security, risking security in terms of credibility, having degrees, all for 1/10 of the way. In a country where you are told that every out of 10 businesses that start, 9 of them survive the first 5 years. Right? And that's a very important thing, which means when I started saying these things, I was sold out. In grade 10, I was asking just about everybody I could ask, how can I become a property investor? How can I become a property developer? Right? And another thing is I facilitated myself for the dream. A lot of people, somebody would say, I must be a billionaire in 5 years. You ask them, how many books have you read this year? 3. You get what I'm saying, right? A lot of people, it's a very common thing. You listen to somebody and they articulate their dream so well. They're seeing their vision so well. But when you talk about the doing, what kind of work are you putting in to facilitate for your dreams? Last night I made a post and I said, even drug addicts are more committed to sober-minded visionaries.
Yeah.
A drug addict understands the power of planning. A drug addict understands the power of staying up late planning. Right? They plan to the point because they understand that they need a fix the next day. They can't finish a day without a fix. Now, I usually say that, yes. So I usually say that that's the kind of hunger I've got for my dreams. All right. I can't go a day without a fix. In other words, I can't go a day without preparing myself, facilitating for the kind of dreams I want to live. Yes. So be reading a book, be that listening to a YouTube video, be that watching a podcast, be that watching a Facebook Live, whatever it is. But every single day, I need to fill my mind with content that are preparing me for where I need to go. That's me selling the idea to myself. Selling the idea to myself. Because, listen, you cannot convince anybody of anything about someone you are not convinced of.
Sure.
So from grade 10 up until grade 12, halfway, I was convincing my parents. Right? And I would use just about any argument I could use to show why it was important for me to drop out of school. Because I said school is not a place for people who want to be wealthy. And I want to be wealthy. It's not facilitating for somebody like me.
Right?
Moms, a lot of people are starting at defending school, which I believe, hold on to the idea, realize it's become so old and it's become so irrelevant. You hold on to that idea until you realize that you are holding an empty idea.
Sure.
And that's how I've started to feel about school. It's that people have not realized that school has fallen so behind in terms of time. If school was irrelevant today, we wouldn't have kids striking for jobs. If school was irrelevant for today, we wouldn't have people who've got degrees and have their degrees collecting dust with them watching Netflix and DSTV every single day. So school is not the fact that you cannot be able to put whatever you've learned into practicality and be able to make a living after you leave school is proof that school does not prepare you for the real world. Because unemployment only means, it's a thing of people being negligent, because the definition of unemployment means you are well able, you have all that it takes to be able to perform the job, but there is no platform for you to perform the job. And the thing is, a lot of these students who finish, school, but after they've received their degrees, and I always ask myself, all this time, couldn't you see that there are no jobs, right? Now, for me, I don't understand, because since grade 10, I was worried about my future. So I don't understand somebody who blindly follows into a system and not pay attention. Standard Bank has made over 3,000 retrenchments over the last 3 years. What are your chances, right? So my thing is, I've watched people from the township, befundile, ahead, and that's because why clever, why prefect, why head boy escolene. Why is it that they are not far today? So for me, I don't understand it, right? So that's why I say school is irrelevant for today's world. School is not preparing your child for the world that awaits them, and that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest problem. I don't mind. I could do it all day long.
Because really, abantu abaphangeli and isikolo indlela isystem yethu designed ngakhona designed in such a way that uphuma phaya uzazi ba ndiyofuna umsebenzi. Cha, ufuna uqashwa and since problemini because awukho ke ngoku azenze la ngoba maziphuhlise umuntu okanye zigrume umuntu akwazi uba azimele ngomso. I've got nothing against into yofunda yobheka esikolweni, but ndiyayiva point yakho when you convinced your parents without diverting from the topic of selling is a way of life, but ndiyafuna nje nomnye umuntu oqalayo who's listening or tuning in for the very first time today that when you dropped out kwa grade
12 halfway
after convincing your parents into yobana jonga andifuni ufunda andisifuni isikolo andifuni ufunda wanikwa i-chance fortunately ngabazali bakho so that uzokwazi upursue, but you had to convince them, selling to them yobana njengoba usithi ufuna nje mntanam ufuna uthini uzawuba uqubangile apha endlini uzawucakamela ilanga. And I prove from as far as grade 10 into yobana I want to do this, I want to create wealth. You don't just want to be rich, you ufuna accumulate wealth ezobhenefita isizukulwana zezizukulwana zakwaNcoyi.
Yes. You know, another important thing about being sold, right, is that you need to ask yourself the question: the idea that you are selling, would you yourself risk your entire future to work on it? Other words, the idea that you are passing on, would you be willing to bet on yourself with everything you've got, that you've got whatever it takes, even if there are no securities? Okay. And that's one of the things we are lacking today. We're lacking leadership, people who are actually able to speak up their mind and be able to stand firm no matter who says what. Today, we're living in a world where people are afraid of sharing their ideas because they are afraid of being misunderstood.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about visionaries, right? It's that when you are a visionary, you cannot be a visionary who is, with a mindset of a sheep, right? You need to be able to stand firm with your ideas and believe your ideas are worth sharing and your ideas are worth listening to. And if so be it, your ideas are worth you being rejected for, because you see what you see and you believe it, right? So after that, I had to learn to sell my vision. So I sold my parents at home because I was sold into it. For people to first be able to invest in your dreams, you need to first be willing to invest in yourself first. We always say this, right? And a lot of people don't understand what we mean. Basically, we mean if you are not sold out to your idea as something that you would do yourself, trust me, you'd be awful at selling. If you're trying to sell me a car that you wouldn't buy yourself, you won't be able to get the sale because you don't believe, you are not convicted that you would buy.
Sure.
Right? So that's a very important thing. Now I had to sell and convince people. So after I dropped out again, I had to start selling my vision and goals to other people. Now, remember what I said the last time. The biggest reason or fear or the bottom line as to why people are actually afraid of selling, it's because people are afraid of rejection. Rejection.
Okay.
When we were kids, there were two sports for us to play. Now, the first sport was that you could either focus on your dreams and make your dreams your sport. The second sport was that you could be a pleaser. Now, being a pleaser is interesting because as young boys, we would watch, girls walk past us in the township, which were, "Chief, now and you're like, "Yo, you're eager." That was one of the fears that every single guy would tell you when they were under pressure with the guys looking at them. They first had the fear of rejection. Nobody said you would be rejected. The girl just walked past, and then when you felt that, "Yo, what if she says no?" and the guys will laugh at you. You know what? We're living in a world where people are afraid of being mocked and laughed at. We're living in a world where people know what they need to do. They know what kind of life they should be living. I mean, God gives you divine ideas. God shows you what you need to become. But the problem is people are afraid of being mocked at. People are afraid of being laughed at. People are afraid of being a conversation for mockery. Now, some guys, now this had more to do with confidence now. So the first time you go there and you're like, "Hey, we have 30 seconds to put an impression onto this person. If you don't get this right, Amachita looking at you, Pangenda, and Kaubuya uzawuhleka." But if you get it right, everybody will be like, "Wow, Ubani, Ubani is a legend." Yes. Now, a lot of my friends overcame that fear and practiced, handling those rejection and that objection until they became good at it. And ultimately, when they became good at it, it was easy for them to get any girl that they would have liked. Now, for people like us, now I was plainly equal. I was like, nah, this game is too much for me. I can't play this one. I was like, I'd rather say I'm committed to my dreams. That was my game. Right? Because for me, I differentiated because a dream will never wake up once and say to me,
Because
it's my dream.
And
Exactly. So for me, I wanted to commit on things that are for the longevity. Right? Now, when I faced failure, I learned to embrace rejection. I learned to embrace objections.
Sure.
And I'll tell you how. Because if you look at every single guy who's very good with women, they'll tell you that they are very confident. Notice one of the first things, they're very confident. Secondly, they don't take rejection personally. Rejection doesn't waver them. They've been rejected so much, it does not matter anymore. Exactly.
Because also you could resource of man down in your best statement because don't want to tap into that, don't want to move out of the comfort zones, because we were ye kind of was our reject and also manando go about also yes no about reject or not.
You don't get what you don't ask for. That's just how life goes, right? Now, so the next thing I had to do now, I then started, calling myself the Rocky Balboa of investing. Now, the reason why I gave myself that nickname, now I'm the kind of person who gives themselves nicknames to embrace whatever challenge I'm experiencing so that I can be able to move forward. So I called myself the Rocky Balboa of business investing because I was failing so much in business. I was failing so much. I was losing a lot of things. I was losing money. I started so many. I was being rejected for 5 years. I called myself the Rocky Balboa of investing. Why the Rocky Balboa? Because the Rocky Balboa wins because it does not quit.
Sure.
He wins because he's been through the punches and he learns how to handle the punches by being in the boxing ring. A lot of people are just popcorn watchers who are doing nothing, eating popcorns and watching Abantu are taking action. And now this is the thing. If you are selling anything, if you have a vision of any sort, you need to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
In other words, you must make do with the fact that you are on the spotlight, your wins are recorded, your losses are recorded. But guess what? You are being punched and being, and paying the price for being in the ring. You are still ahead than everybody who's watching you from the sidelines. Now, this is the thing about those who watch from the sidelines, right? It's that those who watch from the sidelines always have nothing to show.
Yeah. All right, Mpulapuli, it's past. No. Say no, it's 31 minutes. That is 29 minutes before 9 o'clock. Send shekele mizuzu gemba and this opaske diambe up and I say shonkatela because Africa and Fmane umdo suka papa kokta akastart to celebana that kusolukwa and there's this thing about you on the 17th. Chalon. So sakala sasishwa gatelele na part namhlanje. Sitela no lihle King no ismana every Tuesday at this time. Sizama ke sithethe okanye senze okanye sisuse inkwethu okanye siqwabulule inkwethu emehlweni okanye enhloko okanye kuloo ndawo ikho kuyo wenze ukuze ukwazi ingomso ukwazi ukuzimela ngemali yakho okanye ubutyebi because apha sifuna umuntu sizama indyebo that's a correct Xhosa word because andithethi nje being rich being rich but we talk about wealth meaning sithetha ngendyebo apha ukwakha indyebo usakhela isizukulwana esizayo uthi ke awufuneki ube yi-popcorn watcher awukwazi uba uthi watch from at the sideline funa ukuva ke xa kutheni nasizokwazi ukhawuleza sishwangathele nale yanamhlanje.
Awesome. So in closing, I always say that, as a business owner, you need to liken yourself to one of my favorite biblical stories, the parable of the sower. You need to understand that when you are building a business, that's what you are.
Yeah.
Or Sanlam, as companies that were started, decades ago, right? Discovery, decades ago, Old Mutual, decades ago.
Being as busy.
And somebody was planting a seed for you to see these big companies that you see today. Okay. Somebody planted a seed for you and I to see these big companies we see. Now, as a business owner, you should always liken yourself to that sower. What did that sower do? He sowed on rocky ground. On rocky ground, the birds came and ate the seed. The sower then sowed on by the roadside. By the roadside, same thing happened. Birds came, ate the seed. The sower then sowed on thorny ground with thistles. And guess what? The crop grew, but it got choked by the thorns and thistles. Right? But what I like about the sower, he still kept on sowing. Right? He eventually sowed on good ground. Good ground, he reaped 30 folds, 50 folds, 100 folds. What am I trying to say to you guys today, right? What I'm trying to say is, sales is all about sowing, right? Every single day, I make over 20 to 30 phone calls telling people my dreams. Every single day. Not everyone buys. Not everyone says yes. I get rejected every day. Somebody says no every day. Somebody ignores me every day. But what do? I keep sowing. The people who succeed because they major on the fundamental of sowing. If people do not know your vision, people do not know, if you do not share your dreams with people will never be able to help you. Everything you desire in life is in the pockets or possession of somebody else. So I'm stopping there for today.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Ikebile nje ya. Ufumane kaphi ke Lihle King Ngcoyi?
I'm available on Facebook, Lihle King Ngcoyi. I'm available on my website. You can Google and write down Lihle King Ngcoyi. Also available on WhatsApp, on 083 896 5883. Right. So I'm always available. Right. Yeah.
I'll be available. The Empire. Yes, awukwazi iyanyanzeleka. As young as he is, Kapulapuli is only 24. 24. He's only 24. 24 Kapulapuli. Uthetha into ezinkulu ezinjena. Ngamkhangela ke andifuna ngathi ndiyayibaxa, but khamtshekishe man lo mntana mncinci uthetha into ezinkulu ubone uba awunakuchola nto napha kuye. 083 896 5883 ulihle kaKing Ngcoyi lowo. Enkosi lihle mntanam, sabonana next Tuesday. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma. I'm looking forward to next week. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Ngulihle ke lowo, masimkhuphe ngengoma. Papa Elihle ube nemini emnandi kwesibaphulaphuli. Ndiyayazi ke ba andibinambuzo ivele icace. Sikhaleze ke sikhangele ke ingoma kwenze into yobana sizokwazi ukuzijonga uba samfumana na isithethe esuka phaa kwaCocta ke sithethe ngale idibene nokoluka noba ebareji kangakanani na, azasanitize amabhoma okanye kuza kwenza kanjani na, ithini kanye le nto. Ikhona into ethi kuza koluka only nge-17. Why kulindwe 17? Mhlawumbi uzawukwazi usiphendula loo nto leyo. And also akukhutshwa akho migidi njalo. So sisazama ke ba sijonge uba singamfumana nama ke sifake ivenkile sokwazi ukhupha ke ulihle emva koko.
Uvodacom kwathela ezintengiso zihlaziyiweyo ze-festive season ka-2020. So for star 123 star for hash ukuze uzifumanele ezivumelano zintsha yithi goodbye 2020 ngebank kwaye uthi hello 2021 ngebank enkulu kakhulu yonwabela ezizaphulelo zintsha zakho zeJaspel Town kwaye uzifumanele elona xabiso lihle kweli xesha lakho leholide. So for star 123 star for hash ukuze uzibonele ezivumelano zimangalisayo kwakhona ucofa star 123 star for hash ready Vodacom.
We are crossing over, we're cruising. Let's go. We're crossing over to the social crossover from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Weekdays on Kane Up
with Lhoza Wamamfene.
All right, baphulaphuli, thank you. Ndizawuphuma ndizawungena xa ndibambe umntu okakhokta again asixelele ngale nto yokwaluka uba kuzawuthini na. Otherwise, enkosi kakhulu.